23 children found locked inside a $2 million mansion. Over 40 more vanished without a trace. And at the center, a pastor who turned faith into a weapon. This is the story of the most shocking religious trafficking breach in California history. December 2024, 4:37 a.m. Los Angeles, California. Floodlights cut through darkness, illuminating a hilltop mansion that shouldn't exist. Not like this. $2 million, 30 armed mercenaries patrolling 24/7, motion sensors covering every approach, surveillance cameras tracking every angle. This wasn't a house of worship. This was a fortress. And the man inside called himself a man of God. If you believe no child should be hidden behind walls of power, hit like now. What you're about to witness will shatter everything you thought you knew about trust. His name was Pastor Abdi Hirsi, Somali American. Born in the United States, to families across Los Angeles County, he was soft-spoken, persuasive, respected. He spoke about discipline, faith, protection. He offered help to struggling parents, temporary care, religious mentoring, safe spaces for children while families worked long hours. Parents trusted him. That trust became the deadliest weapon. Over 18 months, more than 40 children from small Christian congregations disappeared. No ransom demands, no forced entries, no bodies. One day a child attended church activities. The next day they simply didn't come home. Each case seemed isolated, different neighborhoods, different families, different circumstances, until investigators overlaid the data. Nearly every missing child had passed through the same church. Every one of them had attended sermons led by Pastor Abdi Hirsi. When FBI and Department of Homeland Security moved on that hilltop mansion at 4:37 a.m., they weren't executing a raid. They were launching a rescue. And what they found inside would expose a trafficking network stretching far beyond California's borders. Type exposed. If you're starting to see how deep this goes, the breach that followed was anything but quiet. Steel gates collapsed under hydraulic force. Flashbangs ripped through pre-dawn silence. Armed guards returned fire from behind stone cover, unloading automatic weapons into the darkness. These weren't church volunteers. These were trained mercenaries, former military contractors, men paid to kill, for a pastor who preached salvation on Sundays. FBI tactical teams advanced in disciplined formation, shields locked, commands cutting through smoke and chaos. The firefight lasted minutes, but every second mattered. Agents pushed forward under sustained fire. Glass shattered. Bullets tore into walls. One guard went down, then another. The rest surrendered when they realized resistance was futile. Inside the main house, Pastor Abdi Hirsi was seized attempting to wipe encrypted hard drives. Beside him, agents uncovered nearly 50 military-grade weapons, shipping records tied to violent trafficking networks, financial ledgers showing payments from overseas. But the worst discovery came when agents forced open a locked structure at the edge of the garden. Inside, huddled together in dim light, were 23 children, none older than 10. At that moment, the raid became something far more urgent than an arrest operation. It became a race against time to save lives that had already been erased. If this shocks you, comment "Save the Children." What came next revealed a system designed to make people disappear without anyone noticing. Parents described the same pattern. Their children went to church programs, prayer sessions, religious instruction. Some were promised education. Others were told they were being prepared for missionary work. No one questioned it. Why would they? This was a pastor, a man of faith, a pillar of the community. There was no violence, no threats, just trust. And that trust was systematically exploited. Investigators discovered that at least 41 children entered Hirsi's custody through church-related activities. 23 were recovered alive at the mansion. The rest had been quietly removed from the system. No school records, no medical visits, no digital footprints. To the outside world, these children had simply vanished. What families believed was a place of safety had become a controlled intake point, a system designed to move children without force, without witnesses, without resistance. By the end of the initial review, agents reached a chilling conclusion. The mansion was the holding site, but the church was where it all began, and Hirsi wasn't working alone. Comment "Protect Faith" if you believe religion should never be used as cover for evil. The statewide response came fast and violent. Command authorized what they called controlled ignition points, simultaneous strikes across California designed to collapse the network before it could scatter. Each team operated under separate clocks, silent, coordinated, unaware of when the others would hit. Silence was the weapon. 5:19 a.m., Port of Los Angeles, a logistics depot posing as a bonded warehouse. Guards attempted to torch servers the moment power was cut. Gunfire erupted in total darkness. Muzzle flashes stuttered through smoke. Agents advanced by sound alone. Shields tight. Boots slipping on spilled fuel. 2 guards neutralized. 3 surrendered. The fire never caught. 4 minutes later, San Bernardino, An unmarked compound with no business existing where it stood, no signage, no permits, just armed men and desert silence. When federal vehicles rolled in, suspects poured out from side doors, attempting escape into adjacent lots. A helicopter dropped low. Rotors kicked dust into blinding clouds. Agents moved through chaos, tackling runners mid-stride, disarming weapons before safeties could clear. Then, Fresno detonated. What looked like a cold storage facility fought back like a bunker. Automatic fire punched through thin metal walls. One agent was knocked flat by ricochet. Teams adapted instantly. Breach charges through loading docks. Flanking maneuvers through refrigeration corridors. Flashbangs burst, the shooting stopped. Inside a hidden office, investigators found manifests already half-shredded. Timestamps still warm. San Diego came last and hardest. A residential block erupted when doors blew inward, and armed men returned fire from stairwells and rooftops. Civilians were still asleep. Commands were whispered, not shouted. Precision mattered. Agents advanced inch by inch, suppressing fire without escalation, forcing surrender rather than bloodshed. In under 8 minutes, the block was silent. Across California, 17 locations were hit. Some folded instantly. Others fought until they couldn't. By sunrise, 36 suspects were in custody. Millions in cash stacked on evidence tables. Weapons tagged and cataloged. Phones buzzing with unanswered messages from numbers that would soon go dark. But it was the paperwork that changed everything. Ledgers didn't list cargo. They listed movements, dates, routes, transfers, payment codes. Several entries were marked final. Others carried future timestamps. This wasn't cleanup. This was interruption. And the pattern was unmistakable. California wasn't a hub. It was a corridor. One segment of a machine designed to move people as quietly as narcotics. If you support the federal agents who risk their lives to stop trafficking networks, comment, stand with FBI. The truth gets darker from here. As evidence from across California was consolidated, analysts noticed something deeply unsettling. The routes weren't improvised, they were standardized. Every ledger followed the same formatting. Every transfer used identical coded language. Every shipment moved according to the same timing windows. This wasn't a local ring adapting on the fly. This was an imported system. Financial analysts traced wire transfers through layers of shell companies registered in multiple countries. Donations from religious charities merged with logistics payments. Shipping fees were split, laundered, reassembled, then disappeared overseas. When the money trail was finally reconstructed, it pointed repeatedly to one source: Afghan drug cartels. These networks operate far beyond poppy fields and smugglers. Based primarily in Afghanistan, they control one of the largest heroin and opium production systems on the planet. Federal estimates show over 80% of the world's illicit opium originates from regions under their influence. But drugs are only part of their portfolio. The same corridors that move narcotics also move people. Investigators confirmed that these cartels function as hybrid organizations, part trafficking syndicate, part paramilitary structure. They rely on rigid discipline, compartmentalization, absolute silence. Cells don't know the full network. Assets are disposable. Loyalty is enforced through fear and money. Abdi Hirsi fit perfectly into that design. He wasn't a leader, he was a facilitator. His role was intake and concealment. Using religious authority, he identified vulnerable families, secured temporary custody without resistance, held children until transfer orders arrived. The mansion wasn't a destination, it was a buffer, a place where human cargo could be stored until international routes cleared. Shipping documents recovered during raids confirmed overseas coordination. Containers flagged for priority clearance. Cargo weights intentionally mismatched. Some shipments exited U.S. ports under humanitarian exemptions. Others routed through third countries before vanishing into conflict zones where oversight no longer existed. More disturbing were intelligence links, tying cartel networks to armed extremist groups. Money from narcotics and trafficking routinely flowed into weapons purchases, training camps, insurgent financing. Each child moved wasn't only a crime, it was currency. For federal command, the implications were immediate and severe. This was no longer a domestic trafficking case. It was a national security threat embedded inside civilian infrastructure, churches, charities, ports, supply chains, places designed to be trusted. If you want to understand how this network operated globally, stay with us. The interrogation reveals everything. The interrogation of Pastor Abdi Hirsi didn't begin with shouting. It began with silence. In a secured federal room, hours after the raid, Hirsi sat still, hands folded, eyes fixed on the table. He didn't ask for a lawyer immediately. He didn't deny the charges. He understood something agents already knew. Denial would be pointless. When questions started, they were narrow. Names, dates, locations. At first, Hirsi spoke in fragments. He described his role as administrative. He claimed he only provided temporary shelter. He insisted children were safe while under his roof. But when agents placed photographs on the table, shipping manifests, coded ledgers, surveillance stills from ports and warehouses, his posture changed. The story unraveled. Hersey admitted he was paid to hold children, not permanently, but until roots cleared. His job was to keep them hidden, quiet, undocumented. No schools, no hospitals, no online presence. Children who couldn't be found couldn't be traced. He described how instructions arrived, never directly. Orders came through intermediaries, encrypted messages, financial triggers. When funds landed in specific accounts, it meant movement was imminent. When payments stopped, it meant delay. According to his statements, at least 9 children had already been transferred out of California before the raid. He claimed they were moved in stages, first to inland holding points, then toward ports or land crossings using falsified humanitarian paperwork. He said he never asked where they ultimately went, but the records did. Agents laid out evidence piece by piece. Shipping schedules matched payment timestamps. Vehicle GPS logs aligned with church event calendars. Donations labeled as charitable support were converted into transport fees within hours. The most disturbing moment came when Hersey was shown a ledger page marked with red symbols. Analysts explained those markings indicated completed transfers. Hersey looked away and said quietly, "Those ones aren't coming back." The scope expanded rapidly. Using Hersey's cooperation, agents mapped a network stretching beyond California. Safe houses in neighboring states, logistics partners near ports, financial handlers embedded in legitimate businesses. None of them knew the full picture. Each knew only enough to perform their task. That was the design. What shocked investigators most was how ordinary the system looked from the outside. Churches provided access. Charities provided cover. Shipping companies provided movement. No single transaction appeared criminal. Only when layered together did the crime become visible. By the end of debriefings, command teams confronted a brutal reality. Even with arrests and seizures, the network was still active. Routes could be rerouted. Funds could be replaced. New facilitators could be recruited. Hersey hadn't built the machine. He'd simply operated one of its doors. Some answers come too late. If you believe systems that erase children must be dismantled, press like to keep this story visible. The arrests didn't bring closure. They brought urgency. As reports from interrogations and raids were compiled, federal leadership reached a sober conclusion. Removing Abdi Hersey and his California network had disrupted the flow, but it hadn't stopped it. Too many financial channels were still open. Too many routes remained unaccounted for. The machine had been wounded, not dismantled. Within 48 hours, the case was elevated beyond standard trafficking investigation. Joint task forces expanded under FBI coordination, pulling in international partners, port authorities, financial crime units, counter-terror analysts. New directives were issued: trace the money forward, not backward. Follow replacement activity, not exposed routes. What investigators feared began appearing almost immediately. Shell accounts connected to Hersey went dark, but parallel accounts activated elsewhere. Shipping schedules changed names, not behavior. Charities dissolved on paper, then re-emerged under new registrations. The network was adapting in real time. Analysts identified at least 6 new facilitators stepping into roles vacated by arrests. None had criminal records. Several held respected positions in community organizations. One worked inside a licensed logistics firm. Another operated a religious nonprofit less than 50 miles from the original church. This wasn't coincidence. It was redundancy by design. Field teams executed follow-up operations quietly. No press, no spectacle. Financial seizures prioritized over arrests, aiming to starve movement before it could reorganize. Ports increased inspections under emergency authorities. Cargo previously cleared without scrutiny was now flagged, delayed, dismantled. Still, the hardest part remained unresolved. Of the children moved before the Los Angeles raid, some were located months later, alive, hidden in remote regions, terrified to come forward. Others were never found. Intelligence suggested transfers into conflict zones, where records didn't exist and witnesses didn't survive. Families were notified carefully. Some received answers, others received only probability. For agents involved, the case left a permanent mark. Many had entered law enforcement expecting to confront violence in obvious forms: guns, drugs, gangs. Few were prepared for a system that weaponized trust, faith, and routine paperwork to erase lives without noise. The final briefings didn't end with success statements. They ended with warnings. The infrastructure that allowed this network to operate still exists. Churches still gather children. Charities still move money. E-supply chains still cross borders faster than laws can follow. What changed was awareness. But awareness alone doesn't dismantle a system built to survive exposure. As task forces remained active and international leads continued to surface, one truth guided every ongoing operation. This was never just about one pastor or one mansion or one state. It was about a method, one that could reappear anywhere. Trust goes unquestioned and movement goes unexamined. The hunt continued not as a single operation, but as a standing mission, because somewhere beyond the last raid map, the network was already trying to rebuild. And this time, federal agencies intended to be waiting. Comment never again if you believe this can't be allowed to happen again. The final truth matters most. The investigation did more than expose a trafficking network. It forced the nation to confront a truth many preferred to ignore. When faith is misused and power goes unchecked, darkness can grow in places never meant to hold it. But the lesson wasn't about religion itself. It was about individuals who weaponized it. Pastor Abdi Hirsi didn't represent Christianity or the countless pastors who genuinely protect their communities. He represented something far older and far more dangerous: the exploitation of trust for personal gain. Throughout history, criminal networks have used politics, charities, even religion as vessels, because people instinctively lower their guard around institutions meant to guide and protect them. The Afghan cartel operatives who worked through Hirsi didn't care about sermons or scripture. They cared about access to families, to children, to documents, to legal shields, to the credibility that churches, nonprofits, and community programs naturally carry. When a system is built on trust, the threat comes not from the system itself, but from those who infiltrate it. Federal analysts reported that Hirsi's network operated quietly for years because people hesitated to question a religious figure. They hesitated to question a nonprofit. They hesitated to question a man of guidance. And in the world of organized crime, hesitation is oxygen. Agents emphasize this case is not a condemnation of faith. It's a reminder that faith without accountability becomes vulnerable. Politics without oversight becomes blind. Communities without vigilance become targets. The children were never victims of religion. They were victims of individuals who hid behind religion, knowing society would hesitate to look too closely. As the federal task force expanded nationwide, churches and organizations began implementing stronger protections, background checks, audits, independent oversight, child safety protocols, real-time reporting systems, not because faith is dangerous, but because trust must be protected, not assumed,